Okay, so we were ending Sheep by Valerie Dobbs. And we left off that Sheep still is the dog. He is still with the little boy at um, the orphanage, and he's still trying to kind of figure out what it is that an orphanage is. And then he realizes that this boy doesn't really talk or say anything when the people come, and that he found this boy the perfect family that he could be with. So he really wants to make sure this boy has a family before he leaves. It was the second day of adoption week, and Luke hadn't learned a thing. I watched him from my post beneath the window ledge, hoping he'd catch on, but he didn't. He just wore this long, ugly face and just slumped along. Nobody wants a sulky dog. That boy is. And nobody's going to pick Luke. I have to find him. I found myself rooting for the guy who'd bullied Luke. At least he was trying. But nobody picked him either. I guess Luke was right. People only wanted little kids. Well, they were pretty cute, like puppies, only with people faces on them. Luke came out after a while in the same bad mood and with no money for ice cream this time. His bad moods never lasted long, though. That was another good thing about him. Let's go visit Raggedy Annie. She'll give us some cookies and stuff. She gave me a dime once. All I did was sweep her porch. The whole way there, Luke never stopped talking. Now, how many times I didn't get picked? He almost sounded proud, but I knew that he wasn't. Guess. Well, I just didn't want to, It was going to be a sorry number. I was for sure of that. 26 times. The first couple of times I got real excited. I mean, it was like the big thing. Like you were going to win a prize if you were good. I knew I was going to get picked. I had even dreamed about it once. How I got this really cool folks and how I had my own room all to myself. 26 times? That sounded like a lot. Was adoption week every week? I ran away once. I didn't want to stand in that line again. Not ever. Not even for a quarter. Maybe the boys who smiled got 2 quarters. Did you ever think of that? The whole thing stinks, he said. The give-up words. I'd heard them before from a couple of terriers. He was still talking when we got to Raggedy Annie's. Some place that was. You never saw so much stuff. Bundles of rags were piled up all around her tiny house, in the yard, in the porch, on top of an old car. I just shook my head. You know the way dogs do. People get the craziest ideas. Raggedy Annie came to the door after Luke rang the big brass bell that was hanging beside it. Well, look who's here, she said, pushing back the screen. She had a friendly smile with only a few chewing gum teeth. And you've brought a friend, the lady could hardly get through the door. That's how big she was. I could see then where she got her name or where Luke got it, because that's what she wore, rags. They were tied around her head, around her big middle. Her faded dress was shredded all along the bottom. Even her shoes were tied with rags. She leaned over and patted my head. Nice doggy, she said. I bet you'd like something to eat. Boys and dogs are always hungry. Now here was a smart lady. She went back inside, which took some time. See, what did I tell you, Luke whispered. Rags and junk all over the place. I think she's a little, And he twirled his finger around his ear. But she's real nice. He was right about that part. Out she came carrying a plate of cookies for Luke and a big fat hot dog for me. We chowed down with Raggedy Annie told us about her day. She had been bundling all morning, she said, and now she was waiting for the truck to come. The rags weren't rags at all. They were old clothes. Perfectly good clothes, she said. She collected them from all over. Nobody was as good at finding clothes as she was. You could tell that she was proud of that. Then when there were so many piles she could hardly breathe, a truck would come and take them away. The clothes went to people who couldn't afford or buy them, is what I understood. The poor people, said Luke. Oh, yes, Raggedy Annie said. So poor you can't even imagine. And you should see how some of the clothes that get thrown away. Well, she said, just look at this. She reached into the pile and pulled out a black, slinky thing with shiny stones on the sleeves. And this! Out came a coat with skins of rabbits. Never could understand why people dress themselves like animals. Some of this looks brand new. She clicked her tongue. Such a waste. Luke turned those cookies into crumbs in no time. Raggedy Annie took his plate, then narrowed her eyes at him. You didn't bring your reading book, did you? Luke hung his head. I forgot. She sighed through her nose. Now how are we going to get you up to speed if you don't practice? I don't like reading, said Luke. He was whining then. It hurts a dog's ears, that sound. The kid gave up too easy. Raggedy Annie didn't like that any more than I did. Her eyes went wide. What kind of smart boy doesn't like to read? I'm not smart, he said. Raggedy Annie stuck her hands on her hips. Well, now I've heard it all. A smart boy who doesn't think he's smart and who doesn't like to read. Wait right here. Don't you leave, you hear? She kind of rocked side to side to get her big body going and went back into the house. I really did forget, whined Luke. I nosed my way into a pile of old clothes and got comfy. It was like walking down a city street, all the people smells in there. When Raggedy Annie came out again, my eyes were closed. I drifted off listening to Luke sounding out the words frozen and north. He was right. He wasn't much of a reader, but I knew he was smart. About things like that, you can't fool a smart dog. The next 2 days went more or less like that. Luke wouldn't get picked, he wouldn't get the quarter, and he'd head straight over to Raggedy Annie's. I didn't always take a nap, though. I'd stick my nose into the book on Luke's lap while he sounded out the words. That's how I learned to read. It wasn't so hard. I got real caught up in the book. It was all about this great dog, Buck, and his adventures in the frozen north. It had a man in it, too. I knew Buck was going to save the man even before he did. It was the last day of adoption week. I crawled out from under my porch, glad to leave the noisy rats behind. Nosing my way toward the home, I thought long and hard about Luke, about why he acted the way he did, as if he didn't care if he got a home or not. I think he was afraid to show how much it meant to him. Then he could say it didn't matter when he didn't get picked. He didn't know how to change his ways, so he probably wouldn't. Something had to happen to show the parent people what a good boy he was, and how much he needed them. I thought, and finally I hit upon a plan. I wasn't sure it was going to work, but it was worth a try. Something told me it was Luke's last chance. All that worrying and planning had made me wonder, of course. I was late. Hurrying across the parking lot, I never noticed the old pickup truck there. Once again, I stationed myself under the window. The boys were in their line, hands held out so they could, this old gray guy could check them. Some boys had to leave the room and wash up again. Luke was one of them. I watched him slump out. He came back, wiping his hands on his pants, and went to the end of the line. The parent people came in, 2 by 2. They all looked pretty good catches to me, well-fed, a little bit lonely, but happy-looking. And what do you know? The last ones in were the perfect parents, the same pretty lady and man with the haystack hair. Luke had another chance, if only he would grab it. The gray guy gave his speech, and the boys laughed when they were supposed to, and then the shaking hands stuff started. Luke went down the line, dragging his feet, sticking out his hand each time as if he didn't mean it. I waited until he was one boy away from the haystack guy, until he reached to shake the haystack guy's hand. Then I barked. Loud. Everyone turned. Miss Pinch's mouth fell. The gray guy's glasses slid down his nose. Jack! Luke cried, and raced to the window, and then I began doing my flips. Flip, flip, flip past the window, back again, flip, flip, flip. The window flew open. Luke stuck out his head. Jack! Luke was laughing so hard I had to flip a couple more times. The pretty lady and the haystack man came over to the window, too. They were smiling, watching Luke, watching me. That's my dog, cried Luke, grabbing the lady's hand. His name is Jack. Luke never did let go of the pretty lady's hand. Katrin was her name. He pulled her down the hall, out the door, and introduced her to me. She knelt and petted me with one hand. Luke still held the other one. Well, Luke knows a good thing when he sees one. He just had to learn to look up. Olaf smiled at the 3 of them from the window, his haystack hair shining in the sun. Olaf is the dad. It wasn't long before we were all in the pickup, Luke in the front with his new folks, me in the back where the wind ruffled my fur and I could watch the long road disappearing behind us. It took a while to get to our new place, but it was worth a sore hind end. Not since Bob and Ellen's ranch had I ever seen so much land in one place. We drove up to a little house in a barn, and the first thing I smelled was sheep. Sheep! I hopped out and I began rounding up the herd, all 6 of them. Only 6, but in no time they were the best trained, well-behaved sheep in the whole world. Don't ask me how I know, I just know. Olaf and Katrine were good folks. They were getting things going. A couple hundred acres is all. That's not much for a sheep ranch, but it's a start. Come spring, we'll have our first lambs. More work for me once the silly things are up and running, but that's my job. After a long, hard work day, I sleep with Luke, down by his feet. He needs me, especially in the winter. It gets pretty cold here. Hanging from his bedpost is my old harness. I think Luke put it there to remind us how good we have it now. Luke likes his new school, and he does his best to make Katrine and Olaf proud. Almost every day he brings something home for Katrine to stick on the refrigerator. He can read now, and boy can he draw. Trees and sheep and trains and just about everything. He even drew a picture of me. He had to tell me it was me, but Katrine said it was a very handsome likeness and put a frame around it. It's hanging right there over our bed. I don't dream about the sheep anymore, which is just as well. Sheep in the daytime is sheep at night. A fellow couldn't get any rest, but one night I dreamed about the goat man. It was one of those dreams, that it feels real, that you're really having it, no different from real life, is the saying, with the smells and the color and the sound, like TV, only better. In the dream it was night, and the sky was big and black, set down over our heads, and the silver stars hung down like they were on strings. We were camped along a river, and the goats hunkered down, and the goat man was roasting some dinner over a hot fire. My mouth was watering, watching the goat's meat sizzle and smoke. It wasn't long before he would leave us. The goat man didn't know he was going, of course, but maybe just a little he did, because he was talking about philosophy again, the way old folks do sometimes, why we're on this earth, why we do what we do, all that sort of thing. Life's not hard to figure out, Shep. He poked the fire. Flame shot up and the meat sizzled and spit. Sad to say, most people don't know that. They've got to get themselves a whole pile of money, big cars, fancy houses, run themselves ragged. He shook his head like he was mad and sad all at the same time. Truth is, a fellow doesn't need a whole lot to make him happy. A place to bed down, warm food in his belly, honest work, and good company. But he's got to have one thing more, doesn't he, boy? I didn't know what that could be. All I needed right now was a nice fat chunk of that meat. A fellow's got to know he made a difference, that he used his noodle to make things better. Noodles, another word for brain. Then he gave me that special wink, like he did when he was feeling extra smart. When I awoke from that dream, I didn't know where I was at first. I had been so many places by then that I'd wait sometimes to open my eyes. Who knew that I would find myself back in the terrible circus again? But that there was Luke, fast asleep, his feet against my side. I cocked my ears to listen, but the goat man had faded away to where the memories go and wait for you to have them again. Outside our window, the moon was still just a sliver, a wink in the dark sky. And that's the end. At least he got a home, and he helped the little boy. That makes me happy, because that poor dog went through a lot. Well, I hope you like the book, Sheep, by Valerie Hobbs. Please take an AR on it if you guys can remember everything. If you can't, just come and see me. I will help you, and you can even have a book to look at to refresh your memory before you take the test. Always remember, you can come get books from me too at the library. I'm open till 3:30 every day. All right, I'll see you guys soon. Bye.